Good morning, dear students. How are you? Hope you are all safe and enjoying the online classes in your home. I once again welcome you to the 6th standard students to this class. Your English teacher Gulshan Sharif welcomes you to Mahila Samaja online digital classes. Subject English, topic Amelia Earhart for class 6th standard. In our last class, we studied about the Amelia Earhart, who was born on July 24th on 1897 in Atchison, Kansas. Amelia Earhart's enthusiasm and free spirit knew no bounds, and she was the first woman to pilot an airplane from Atlantic to the Pacific coast. Was full of curiosity and adventure since her childhood. I even showed you the pictures of this Amelia Earhart, and in our last class we also studied about the incident that took place when she was in her childhood. So she escaped from the accident that was going to happen between the horse and Amelia, and she was safe. She was sitting up, either her head or the horse rib would have suffered in the contact. Probably the horse rib would have broken. Okay, in another incident, we studied about her favorite dog, that is Amelia's pet dog, James Ferocious, was a companion since her childhood, and it was his nature of the James Ferocious, the growl at the boys and also the stranger. So the students, noticing that the animal was tied in the place, the boys began to tease the dog. The name of the dog is the James Ferocious, and became infuriated, and upon breaking free from his dog chain, the boys had to climb atop the shed for safety. Till here, we studied about that in the last class. Now, I am going to start the next paragraph. Please pay your attention here. Amelia was awakened from her afternoon nap by the commotion, the boys screaming for help, and her infuriated pets barking. Amelia's father had taught her to never run away, and she instinctively acted upon it. Amelia immediately walked to the center of her ad and called to her dog, scolding him in a firm, loving voice for having tipped over his dish of water. Then Ferocious reluctantly came to Amelia's outstretched hand. As she calmed the dog with her touch, she led him inside the kitchen. Even with her dog's enraged state, Amelia firmly stood her ground and spoke in a confident tone, saving her from becoming the brunt of her pet's rage. When asked later by her mother if she was scared, Amelia replied, "There wasn't any time to be afraid." So here, children, as you know that the dog was barking and the boys they shut up to protect themselves. So after hearing the noise, barking noise of the dog and the boys shouting noise of the dog, Amelia woke up from her afternoon nap by the noise and the disturbance from she was getting out from the outside. The boys were screaming for help and her dog was barking continuously. Amelia's father was taught her never to run away from any condition. So she was standing firmly and she even listened to his teaching. Amelia immediately walked to the center of the yard, that is the dog where it was tied there, from, and scolding him a strong and angry voice for having jumped and turned over his bowl of water. So the bowl of water that was kept for the dog there, he changed the position of the bowl and making it fall. James immediately came to Amelia when she had stretched her hand, and Amelia James into kitchen. So what had happened there? She called the James, and immediately after calling the James with having a soft affection. The James ferocious went to Amelia when she had stretched her hands. Even in that angry state, the dog Amelia stood in front of it with a great confidence and spoke to the dog. Though the dog was in the angry mood, Amelia spoke the dog with the soft way, and the dog which saved her from the anger of dog. Later when her mother asked her wasn't she afraid, she replied was that the time to be there was no time to be afraid. Okay. Amelia stretched her hand to call her pet James ferocious. So next there is Amelia's first flight. In one of the more dramatic moments of Earhart's childhood, she, her sister, and a neighbor boy built a roller coaster at the family's home in Kansas City. The track began to the top of a tool shed about 8 feet off the ground. The children, with a little help from their uncle Carl Otis, constructed the track from the boards and greased it with lard. So here lard is a type of fat used for cooking. Amelia made the trial run in a car made from an empty wooden crate. From an empty wooden crate. As her sister recalled, Amelia rode the crate down the track much faster than either of us anticipated. As it carried down the track, we heard the sound of splintering wood. The car and Amelia departed the track when the car hit the trestle. So here the trestle means a frame to support a tabletop. Okay. Both tumbled on the ground. Amelia jumped up, her eyes alight, ignoring a torn dress and bruised lips. So bruised lips ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮೂತಿ ಮುಖ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಡೆದೋಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. She exclaimed happily, "Oh, Pidge, a pet name of her sister Muriel. It's just like flying." So here in the second para in Amelia's first flight, what had happened? One of the most enjoyable and funny time in Amelia's Earhart's childhood was that she and her sister and a neighboring boy had built a roller coaster at the family farmhouse in Kansas City. So that was in Kansas City. The neighboring boy, she and her sister made a roller coaster for the trial there. The track was very big, starting from a tool shed top and was 8 feet above the ground. And the children with the help of their uncle. So the uncle name is Carl Otis. He helped them a lot to build this roller coaster and constructed the track and boards and greased them with oil and fat. That is called as a lard mentioned in the lesson here. Amelia made the trial in the empty wooden crate which was made as a car. Okay. So what had happened afterwards in the sense means as far as Amelia's sister would recall, Amelia's rode very fast on the track as expected, dive into the speed, it became uncontrollable and due to the car to the speed, there were five fire fragments and or fire splinters seen in between the track and car. So the speed was more, so the splintering sound it came from out the wood when the car hit the tabletop. Amelia jumped off her eyes were somewhere. She ignored the torn dress ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹರಿದೋಗಿರುತ್ತೆ and bruised lips means injured and swollen lips. She shouted happily, "Oh, Pidge!" Pidge means here the nickname for her sister Muriel. So I showed you in the first video the sister of Amelia there. Her nickname is Pidge. Oh, their name was Muriel. It was first like flying. So though she got hurted, her dress was torn. She was not bothered about her body and her dress. She just told that she was very happy and she exclaimed happily, "Oh, Pidge, it's just like flying." See the made by Amelia here. You can see in her farmhouse. where they made the roller coaster with the help of the neighboring boy and the help of Uncle Carol Otis. So if you want to read better understand,
Amelia
you can
Earhart
go
is one
through
of
this
the
video.
world's most famous aviators. Her determination to follow her dreams and break through barriers continues to inspire today. She was born in 1897, the older of two sisters. As children, Amelia, who was mostly called Mealy, and her younger sister Grace, who was also known as Pidge, could be found doing boisterous activities and not at all conducting themselves like young ladies of the time. Their mother Amy had them wearing bloomers and didn't see the attraction of shaping her daughters into nice little girls. They had an active life in the outdoors and spent much of their time catching insects and other wildlife. Amelia developed an urge for thrill-seeking at an early age. When just 7 years old, she decided to make a homemade roller coaster attached to the family tool shed. Throwing herself down a homemade slide, she flew off the end and landed in a heap, ripping her dress and bleeding from the lip. Despite her injuries, she excitedly proclaimed to her sister,
"Oh, Pidge, it's just like flying."
When she was 10 years old, she came face to face for the first time with an aircraft at the Iowa State Fair. Earhart's father tried to get Amelia on the plane, but she refused, saying,
"It's a thing of rusty wire and wood, and not at all interesting."
In 1917, Earhart decided to become a nurse after seeing the plight of soldiers returning from the front in World War I. In 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic struck, and while nursing the sick, Amelia herself fell ill. The illness left her with lifelong sinus problems, which sometimes impaired her flying. Amelia wasn't one to lie around, though. She took advantage of the time as she was recovering by studying mechanics and learning to play the banjo. Later that same year, she attended an air show with a friend where a World War I flying ace was putting on a demonstration of his skill. Seeing Amelia and her young friend on the ground, the pilot dived at them, intending to scare the young women and make them scamper away. However, Amelia stood her ground. She later said she did not understand it at the time.
"But I believe that little red airplane said something to me as it swished by."
She became passionate about learning to fly. Saving and borrowing money from her mother, she managed to get $1,000 to enroll in flying school and took her first lesson in 1921. She was taught by another woman aviator, Anita Snook. To fit in with the other women pilots, Earhart cut her hair short and wore a brown leather flying jacket, which she slept in for 3 nights so that it didn't look completely new. 6 months later, she bought her first plane. It was a second-hand Kinner Airster, which she named the Canary. That same year, she set the women's altitude record by reaching 14,000 feet in the Canary. After the financial crisis in the 1920s, money was tight, and she had to sell the Canary and took up work as a teacher and a social worker. During this time, she was still passionate about aviation and wrote several newspaper columns championing women aviators. Around this time, she got a call at work from a Captain Hilton H. Rayleigh who asked her a simple question that would change her life. Would you like to fly the Atlantic? She was only to be a passenger on the flight, but it still made her the first woman passenger to fly across the Atlantic. The plane landed in Southampton Water in England. The locals gave her a rousing reception, and the mayor of Southampton, who was also a woman, congratulated her heartily. In a later interview, Earhart said,
"Started all the flying. Had to. I was just baggage, like a sack of potatoes. Maybe someday I'll try it alone."
Returning to America, she was hailed as the Queen of the Air by newspapers. She became associate editor at Cosmopolitan and had a number of celebrity endorsements for many products, including clothes and luggage, and of course, commercial flying. She now pushed for an untarnished record of flying achievements of her own. In 1928, Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the North American continent and back. In 1931, she set a world altitude record of 18,415 feet. In 1931, she married her publisher George Putnam after he had proposed to her 6 times. In a letter to her husband delivered to him on the day of the wedding, she wrote,
"I want you to understand, I shall not hold you to any medieval code of faithfulness to me, nor shall I consider myself bound to you similarly."
She kept her surname, and she considered her marriage as being one of dual control. On May the 20th, 1932, Earhart set off from Newfoundland for what is seen to be her greatest achievement, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. It took almost 15 hours. She landed her Lockheed Vega 5B in Ireland, where she was greeted by the locals, who asked, "Have you flown far?" Earhart replied,
from America.
In 1937, approaching her 40th birthday, Earhart said,
I have a feeling that there's just one more good flight left in my system.
that flight was to be an attempt to fly around the world. On July 2nd, 1937, Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan took off from Lae in New Guinea with a destination of Howland Island in the Pacific, a tiny piece of land 2,200 miles away. Special navigation procedures were put in place. Radio contact was to be made with the US Coast Guard ship Mssklr off Howland Island. Using direction-finding equipment, Earhart should have been able to navigate in. After taking off from Lae, Earhart encountered problems with overcast skies and rain. Some witnesses reported that the radio antenna may have been damaged. Nearing Howland Island, the communication was confused and sporadic, and for a number of reasons it was not sufficient to determine direction. The last communication from Earhart was at 8:43 a.m.
We are running north and south.
The Mssklr began a rescue after she failed to land on Howland, but nothing was found. On January 5, 1939, Earhart was declared legally dead. No trace of the world's most famous female pilot, her navigator, or their plane has ever been found. In a letter to her husband to be opened in the event of her death, she wrote,
Please know I'm quite aware of the hazards. I want to do it because I want to do it. Women must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be but a challenge to others.
So hope students you enjoy this video and you came to know how she was disappeared in the Pacific Ocean. Now let's go for the meanings there. Anticipated, expected, carried, moved so swiftly in an uncontrolled way, splintering, breaking into small sharp fragments, crystal, a frame to support a table top. Let's go for the home assignment section. Question answers you have to write and upload in the WhatsApp group. What you meant by lad? What was Amelia doing when James was barking? Who helped Amelia to construct the track? So dear students, I end this class here. I hope you enjoy a lot. Meet you in the next session of the class, in English class, with a new fiction, that is a salt on magpie's tail. Okay, till then, take care. Be safe in your home. Thank you.